Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Elevate, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. We're going to kick off with a little announcement today. We want to remind everyone that they can take their fundraising event to school and join us at the Elevate Conference, March 12th and 13th, a hybrid conference. Folks can travel to Portland, Oregon and join us or tune in from anywhere. Be sure to grab your tickets at elevatenonprofit.com. There's a link in the show notes.
Yep.
And we often see the fundraising event as a moment to be brave and make the big ask and invite people in. And so we've invited one of the best to help us figure out how to be brave and make the big ask, how to find the mindset, how to put systems in place, strategies in place. So our leading expert in making bigger asks is kicking us off and joining us today.
A former executive director, Rhea Wong is a podcaster. She hosts Nonprofit Lowdown, expert fundraiser and consultant who helps executive directors and development staff raise money. She runs the Big Ask Gift Program, an executive coaching program that trains nonprofit leaders to fundraise more money from high net worth donors. She's also the author, with Isabella Masucci, of Get That Money, Honey, the no bullshit guide to raising more money for your nonprofit. We have been following your work for a long time. You have important things to say to this sector. Thank you so much for the generosity of your time today. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with friends. I know we have lots to talk about.
We do.
We do. So let's just kick it off with a big question that's in the room. How can our nonprofit friends out there do a better job of identifying potential donors?
Oh my gosh, this is such a good question. Okay, so you're going to have to forgive me if I go off on tangents. Feel free to reel me back in, but you just like wind me up and let me go. So when I think about a major gift program or really any individual fundraising, there are kind of four constraints that we look at, right? Constraint number one is, are you getting enough eyeballs on it? Is your audience big enough? Are you getting enough traffic? Constraint number two is, are you converting that traffic, right? So it doesn't matter if you have a billion people on your email list. If you're not getting them involved, engaged, giving, doesn't really matter how big your audience is. I call those, vanity metrics. And we're like, I have this many followers in social. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care how many of them are actually donating. So that's the second constraint. Third constraint is amount. Like, are people actually giving at levels that are sustainable to your organization? Are they repeating their gift? Are they giving with frequency? Are they giving their best gift? And then the fourth is, and this really, I have a bug up my butt about this recently, are retention rates. Are you losing people out the back end because you aren't providing a good donor experience? And I feel like I'm on this tear right now. The reason why we have a hard time getting donors to come to us is that we probably, and I say this, broad strokes, but I think it's generally true, we haven't taken care of the donors that we have.
Yeah.
So how could we possibly attract more people if the word is out that like, it's like not a great experience. Like, I haven't been treated well. Like, you wouldn't go to a restaurant again if you got bad reviews, right? If my friend went to this restaurant and they came back and they said like, the food was not great, the service is not great. Like, I'm not lining up to go to that restaurant.
Right.
And so I think the opportunity that we miss is that we don't take care of the people that we have, who are our best ambassadors to then spread the word about, hey, I went to this amazing restaurant. You should try it too. I've had this amazing donor experience. I had this amazing site visit. You should look into it. And so, because I think so often we get into this scarcity mindset where we just see people as these walking checkbooks or these walking ATMs, right? I think that when I get the gift, I've closed it and I'm on to the next. But in my donor's mind, I'm just at the beginning of opening a relationship.
Yes.
Like, what gives? And so if people are hearing nothing else, your job is not to close the gift. It is to open a relationship. And I play this thought experiment game with everyone I talk to. I'm like, okay, just imagine a world where you couldn't get one new donor. Like, the only donors you're ever going to have are the donors that you have now. How would you act differently? And it's like, oh, well, I would, I don't know, reach out to them. I would make them feel appreciated. I would write notes. They're like, yes, Exactly. So why aren't you doing that?
I think
Last thing I'll say.
oh, go ahead.
Well, the last thing I'll say is I recently learned that, do you know what the customer lifetime value of a Starbucks customer is? Like over the lifetime, how much you're going to spend at Starbucks?
I have no idea. It's
I'm
going to be a
hoping
lot of
you're gonna tell
frappuccinos,
us.
though. Yes,
Yeah.
please tell us.
I don't know. Just guess. Because I learned this and I was like,
I have no idea. Maybe $1,500. No, probably more than that. Like
all right,
how much in their lifetime they're going
25 grand.
$15,000. Wow. $15,000 on average is how much a customer who goes into Starbucks will spend over a lifetime. Now, I say that all to say that it means that Starbucks knows that they can spend money on the front end, getting customers in because of the experience where they will retain you over a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
What we do in the nonprofit sector, which is so crazy making, is we spend so much money getting new donors and then we just lose them at the back. So we're essentially losing money because it's really expensive to get a new donor, right? Our cost for acquisition, is like whatever, it's, the marketing plus the salary plus the overhead plus whatever. Chances are you're probably not making enough on that first gift to even recoup the cost of acquisition, but then you're losing them out the back. So essentially you've lost money from this one-time donor. It makes me crazy. Okay.
I think that so often our board of directors, our, organizing team around us are so stuck in acquisition addiction. Yeah. And yet what you just said about the cost of acquisition, the expense of it, but also acquisition, if you're thinking about a new donor coming in, typically the first gift an individual gives is their lowest gift to an organization. So if you're just stuck in that acquisition addiction cycle of spending a lot of money to get a donation and getting in a low dollar donation, you are missing the big opportunity.
I'm testing you.
Yeah.
As a donor with that first gift, I'm putting my toe in the water and being like, is this a relationship I want to be a part of? I'm testing you.
Well, we talk a lot about the importance of the relationship, the cultivation, but you talk about qualifying donors rather than simply putting them into a cultivation sequence.
Oh my gosh.
Can you tell us what that process looks like? Like, what is that?
Yeah. Okay, so here's the mistake everyone makes that, like, I made it too, so like no shade, but we think that prospects, so all the people out in the world that I can contact equals people I'm going to solicit. And when we miss that step of qualification, that's when we get low retention rates. That's when we spend a lot of time and energy chasing people who do not want to talk to us, do not want to be involved with us, do not want to give to us, but we're just like in this desperation cycle. Like, I will literally ask money from anybody. And it's like going into a bar and just asking everyone to marry you. It's like, okay, sure, you could do that. But like, feels like that's a really inefficient way to do things. And also like very low quality. So one of the things that I really spend a lot of time thinking about is a lot of the practices that we have in the nonprofit sector are really old. They're outdated. They were developed like 60 years ago when people had a lot of time to like go on coffee dates and like lunch meetings and ladies who lunch and blah, 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 blah. And we haven't upgraded our tactics and strategies to represent life in 2024. And the truth of the matter is most people self-cultivate and self-solicit. Like how many of us have just gotten random checks and we're like, I don't know who this person was not in my portfolio. Like I got magic money, right? Yay. But also that means that I don't actually have control. And so we have this illusion of control of like the moves management system, right? Like, oh, I'm going to give it to my board. And then my board will be convinced that I'm doing my job because I have this beautiful graph of how people are going to move linearly through these different steps. And then I'm going to do these things and say these special words and it will make them give me something. I'm like, cool.
Sounds like a unicorn world.
Yeah, right. I was like, I don't know anybody for whom that's the way it works, but maybe there is someone out there. So if that is you, hit me up. I want to know. Instead, I think we need to think about how are we creating opportunities for people to move themselves along the process. That means how are we creating high value content to bring them closer? So it's about offers, not about actions, right? Like I can't make anyone do anything. What I can do is entice them to take steps closer. Now, let's say that there's a universe out there of like all the people in the world. And then of all the people in the world, there are people who know about you. And then of all the people who know about you, there are people who are actually interested in what you do. And of the people who are interested, there are people who are actually going to be engaged with you. And of the people who are engaged, there are people who actually have some kind of capacity to give, right? So like you're carving out the universe of people down to a subset of people who have capacity, who are actually interested in what you do, who have some kind of relationship with you, and who've been involved with you recently. That's the other thing that makes me crazy, and I'm sure we've all heard this. Like, why don't we just call Oprah? Why don't we just call Scott? You're like, because the only way that this person has met your criteria for qualification is that they have money.
Right.
They don't know you. They have not demonstrated interest in what you do. You haven't been in contact with them recently. They just have money. Like,
Not
again,
enough.
that's not enough, right? So there's a pre-qualification that happens, and then you fully qualify. And I think this is an important step. I think a lot about this concept of consent. Like we all have to ask consent. And yet we enter prospects into a cultivation phase without their consent. Like they literally have not told you that they want to be in this thing with you. And then we get pissed off if we don't give. I'm like, but they never even knew that that's what they were like. What are we talking about here? And so I think when we are engaging with donors, particularly major gift donors, we have to go through a discovery phase and we have to ask them consent to be on this process with us, this journey with us, because if we don't, like, then it's very confusing for everybody. Like, I keep calling this person for coffee. This person has no idea what I'm doing. And then like your friend zone. And then it's like weird because now we're friends and I can't ask you for money. Whereas if I'd been clear on the front end, like, hey, Sam, Kristen, I'd love for us to engage in a process where we get to know each other. And at the end of that process, I'd like to put a proposal for funding in front of you. How does that sound to you? Does that sound good? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Or not, right?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
If I'm like, or no, I'm like, cool. Maybe we do this at another time. Maybe the timing's not right, or maybe we're never going to do it. But like, at least I know what we're in for. It's like when I was dating, I've been married for a long time, but when I was dating, I really appreciated when I went on dates with people who were like, hey, listen, I'm really not looking for anything serious, or like, hey, I'm looking for a relationship. It's like, cool. I just want to know what journey I'm on. And I don't want to spend, but I like do me the honor of just being straight up with me about what your intentions are.
Clear as kind.
Well, and I think the threads I'm hearing that I don't know that we willingly forget in development, but just sometimes doesn't dawn on us. Your donors have will and autonomy.
Right.
Right? It is not, and moves management, I think sometimes paints a picture of inevitability.
Yeah.
If I just do the thing, they will inevitably fall into the next bucket along the train, right? But at any point, they have a whole life and story and stuff that's going on for them.
Yeah.
And at any point, if you're not in relationship with them, you feel like, I don't know, it just didn't happen. And it's like, well, to me, that speaks to being in the conversation and knowing at any point they can choose one way or another. And that's not about you.
Right.
It's about it's them and their mission, right? Like that's what we're here fostering.
Yeah. And that's such an important point. So I talk a lot about the hero's journey, right? Are either of you like Star Wars fans or Game of Thrones or
Yes. Joseph Campbell, all the things. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Joseph Campbell, all the things, right? So we are but the guides to our donor's hero story. Like at the end of the day, we all tell ourselves a story about who we are. I'm the kind of person that is committed to climate change. I'm the kind of person who cleans the oceans. I'm the kind of person who believes in education. Like whatever the thing is that you tell yourself, my job as a donor is to help you tell your story of yourself to yourself. Like, what is the thing that you want in the world? Like, we all want something. right? Even if the want is like, I just want to feel like a good person. I just want to feel like I'm making a difference in the world. I just want to feel like I'm giving back. I just want to be an example to my kids. Like, we all want something. As a fundraiser, my job is to help you articulate the thing that you want and to help you get the thing that you want. And to your point, like, I think we also have to be clear that the velocity lies in the hand of our donors, not us. Like, I might want you, and I think this is where the boards are guilty. They're like, what's our, we need to hit our numbers at the end of the quarter, or like end of the year, da, da, da. But that doesn't take into account the fact that that may not be my timeline as a donor.
Right.
And literally nothing that you do is going to move me faster than I am willing to be moved.
But so that brings up for me that dynamic of the relationship at play, the fundraiser and the donor in conversation. And I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about relationship equity in the world of fundraising, and how do we avoid extraction instead of moving our donors to investment?
So relationship equity in the sense of like the disproportion of power, or like what?
Yeah, just the power, the conversation. Like when we're taking a look at the transaction of solicitation to giving, how are we both equal partners in that conversation? You talked a little bit about helping you to manifest your dream. If I've never made an ask before, or a big ask, how am I doing that? Like, how am I showing up as an equal partner?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Okay, so a couple things here. First, I think as a fundraiser, you have to deeply believe in the value that you're bringing to the table. So often, I think we believe that we're in a supplicant role, that we're inferior. But the truth is, you bring resources and they bring resources, and without you, they couldn't do the thing, and without them, you couldn't pay for the thing. So I think first and foremost is recognizing that a mentor of mine says this. Go into an ask on your feet, never on your knees.
That's great.
And not every donor is going to be the donor for you, right? If it seems that like working with someone is out of alignment for you, you don't have to work with them. Like, this is the beauty of it. There are 365 million people in the US. Like, there are other people in the world. This is not your last and only donor, right? So I think there has to be a level of confidence and courage to be able to say no to money that isn't good for you. Like, not all money is good money, right? So I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing, and this is really what I'm trying to teach, and I'm going to get on my soapbox here. I believe that when you are truly in conversation with your donor, when you follow a process with your donor, there's no reason to do a high stakes ask. What you do instead is you co-create a proposal that is aligned with what they care about, the project they care about, the timing, and the amount. So by the time you present it, like, we've talked about it, you know what's coming, you're seeing it in black and white, and then we have a conversation like, does this make sense? How are we going to do this? What's the time? Like, it's like it's like a scope of work, right? Like, you've told me what you want. I've put together this proposal. Let's talk about how we move this forward. And so I think we need to get away from these like high stakes, like big asks where you're like, you're all nervous because it's going to be a surprise to your donor, and you're nervous because you might be rejected. But the thing is, no one likes to be surprised like that.
Right.
So I even have to go back to what I've been teaching around how to do the ask. Like, I don't think you should do the ask, at least not like that. I think, especially at the major donor level, the ask needs to be a co-created process where you have calibrated the right time, the right amount, the right project.
I think that that's true in our corporate sponsor world too. I mean, so many of our events have a giant revenue source coming in from corporate partners. And I think that we often have development professionals that are fearful of the big ask because they think big corporation. And yet, if we're in conversation with them, this is a shared, collaborative, iterative process in which we're there as an equal partner because they have investment goals, they have charitable giving goals. And if you're a good steward of their funds, it's an equal partnership at the table. And I think it's important for development professionals to hear that over and over, because I think we're constantly in that challenge of, from our boards, from our committees, of how are we going to get there? How are we going to get there? That time and attention and conversation has to involve a collaboration with the donor.
Yeah. So let's say through this conversation, we are piquing the interest of some of our frontline fundraisers who are hearing this and going, my God, that would be such a better way to raise money. I can see it. This feels collaborative. This feels like an extension of the relationships I'm trying to have with donors. And you sort of started pointing the arrow in this direction. My board/executive leadership team has ideas about timelines for fundraising. And I know that we're talking about like customized processes with each donor, but in order for these frontline fundraisers to get some time and space to do that, what's the expectation they should be setting with leadership around what a timeline for some of these major donations is? Like how long could, like on average, if they're like, could you stay off my back for X? What does that actually look like in that conversation?
Yeah, it's a good question. So again, I'm going to quote my friend Greg Warner, and I'm going to just believe him on this. He said that on average, it takes about 18 months from start to finish to clear a major gift. And I think that's starting from scratch, right? Like that is starting from like, we don't have any kind of relationship. Now, what I think you could do to get your board off your back is that you actually track the velocity of the engagement and the trust, right? So if you're like, look, because the thing is, the way we've done traditional fundraising is it's very activity oriented, right? Like I had this many visits, this many phone calls, this many coffees, whatever, but that doesn't actually tell you about the quality of the conversation and the quality of the relationship. And so if I am able to report out my activities, if you will, in a way that is about quality, not quantity, and look at like, okay, based on where they are in the process, I think that we're looking at, this amount in January, like these amounts may be coming in February and so forth. And so I think it's about asking better questions based on better metrics. So I don't know if to answer your question, but I think if you gave your fundraisers a little bit of space to actually breathe and implement these strategies, the other thing that you're doing is because you've had the conversation on the front end about being on this cultivation journey, like you already know that there's going to be a gift because they literally opted into the process. Now, you don't necessarily know what that gift is, but isn't it better that you're spending your time with high quality prospects who have opted into the process than it is like chasing these low dollar people who like you have no idea if they want to be engaged? Like I would rather spend my time. I'd rather my fundraiser spend their time like that.
Well, and I think that circles us back around to the idea of the best way to impact some of that timeline too is to be talking to folks you're already in relationship with and to get off this acquisition piece. When you're talking about metrics, I think sometimes the sparkle comes from like, we had 300 people show up at this event who don't know us at all and they're all potential. And it's like, we know they're not.
Right.
No, they're not. Who are you already in potential with and what does that look like?
That's right.
Which I think is a really great place.
I want to ask you a little bit about your coaching and specifically, I'm thinking of a lot of, we've seen a huge influx in the nonprofit sector of new people and folks that are just now moving into fundraising. So I'm imagining a new fundraiser coming into an existing organization with an existing donor base and getting that first meeting. Someone they don't know, but they got the meeting. They've clearly articulated what the goal of the meeting is. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach or coach someone to feel prepared to go into that meeting? I'm assuming that there's some like know before you go advice that you would give to folks.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question because I think the other thing that I think our sector suffers from a little bit is analysis paralysis. Like we're like, okay, I've like Google searched them and I've done a well screen and I know their mother's maiden name and but I actually haven't picked up the phone to call them. Like, so when I advise people so first of all, I will say like getting the meeting is the hardest part because we are all busy and time is truly the non-renewable resource. Like money is easy, time is not. So when I'm thinking about a meeting, my first question is, what value am I giving to my donor? or my potential donor, right? Is it the value of my presence? Is it the value of truly connecting? Is it the value of help, really understanding what it is they want and how I can help them get it? And I'll say this, there are 3 levels of listening. Level 1 listening, which is where I think a lot of fundraisers hang out, is I'm just listening to respond. I'm just listening with my own agenda and the pause in conversation, and then I'm just going to say what I'm going to say. Level 2 listening is I'm fully present, no agenda, I'm here. And level 3 listening is I'm listening for what's not being said. Now, level 3 listening is really hard to do, right? It's you're reading body language, you're listening to tone of voice, you're hearing the silences. But if I'm truly in service to my donor as their guide, if I'm truly here with no agenda other than to understand what it is you want to achieve in the world and can you do it with us? Can I help you to articulate what's important to you? And do I see a path that is aligned with the work that we do? And if I don't, that's okay too. If in the first conversation, if someone's like, you know what? I just realized I want to save the whales. I'm like, fantastic. The whales need saving too. I'm not here to convince anybody to do anything. I am here to create a pathway for you to live the story of your life that you tell me you want to live.
Yeah.
So I think that there's some homework in advance, which is I want you to think about what are some of the asks that you might make to move them along the process, right? It's like dating. If I have a good coffee date, the next proposal may be let's meet for dinner. If that goes well, maybe we meet for a weekend, whatever. But I want to know what that next step is in my mind, but I also want to be flexible to hear other possibilities that I may not have known about or thought about. And so again, I'll quote my friend Jennifer McCrae, when you walk away from a meeting, if you feel exhausted, you've been pitching. If you feel energized, you've been connecting.
Oh, can you say that again?
Yeah,
That's so
that's
good.
great.
If you feel exhausted, you've been pitching. If you feel energized, you've been connecting.
That is so good. All right, we're going to talk connecting when we come back. We're going to take a short break. We're here with Rhea Wong, and we'll be back to talk about connecting.
Ready to take your fundraising to the next level? Need to get unstuck in your event planning? Now's your chance to connect directly with the experts behind the Fundraising Elevator. Book a one-on-one consulting session with Sam for strategic planning and fundraising strategy, with Kristen for your program and storytelling, or Mary for your registration and data tools. They're here to provide you personalized answers to all your event questions. Don't wait. Raise more at your next fundraising event. Book your session today at elevatenonprofit.com. You can also find the link in the show notes.
Welcome back. We are here with Rhea Wong. We were talking about donors and asks, and I want to leave donors for just a minute, maybe more than a minute, to talk about development within nonprofit organizations. Lack of professional development, our experience of it, is leading to a real crisis in the sector. There's a lot of folks who are vacating the sector. There's a lot of folks coming into the sector brand new who are not being taken care of. You are a big champion of capacity building and have said that professional development is not a nice to have. Talk about that, because I think that is infinitely true. And I love getting people, as many people as possible, to talk about that for the organizations out there.
Well, it's so funny, actually, as you were talking, I was just thinking about the fact that what's happening at the level of the nonprofits is the same thing that's happening at the level of the donor, which is we're on this treadmill of just crunching through people. And instead of maximizing what they have to offer, we're like, well, on to the next, which means you just get a lot of low-skilled, new, inexperienced people in these jobs, and then you burn them out. So, what I can say, and I'm sure both of you can resonate with this, I have had so many dear friends of mine leave the sector because they're burnt out.
Yeah.
They are underpaid, they're undervalued, and frankly, they can't afford to hire the sort of help that they need in order to scale up.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, when you hire inexperienced people and then you refuse to pay to have them trained properly, then you're just exacerbating the same problem again and again. So what I do in my work is I train nonprofit fundraisers, and I don't want to tell tales out of school, but I had a sales call recently with the organization that wanted their major gift officer trained. She wasn't really producing the way they wanted. Fine. We had like multiple conversations. And in the end, they just sent me this email like, yeah, we decided not to. No explanation. And look, it could just be that they decided they didn't want to work with me. Fine. That's fine. But if you're unwilling to invest the money to skill up the people that you need to produce money for you, then what are you doing? Like it's literally just shooting yourself in the foot over and over and over again. And I would not be surprised if this person that they want to train up is going to leave eventually because she doesn't feel successful in her job and she's being asked to do this impossible job with no support and no training and no structure and no systems in place. I'm like, okay, well then you're just going to see this churn. So I just feel like there are operational decisions that you have to make and understand what the consequences are. If you consistently underinvest in your people, if you underinvest in your systems, if you underinvest in the quality of the work that you're doing, don't be surprised if you get low quality work.
Mm-hmm. Before we took a break, you talked about the importance of connection and that like what you're speaking about, the investment of energy, time, training into your team. I also think about the importance of the best path to avoid burnout is connection. So how do we like clear our development professionals of all the extra obligation so that we can deeper invest them? Like, how do we take the extra stuff off their plate in order to create time for capacity building, time for connection, time for that deeper conversation with donors, time to learn? What is the path for our fundraising development professionals to have their energy going toward the thing that's going to have the biggest impact?
Yeah.
Yeah. I look, I don't know how to create more hours in a day. I wish I did. But,
I wish you'd be a millionaire.
I know, billionaire, $1 billion. I don't necessarily know the answer to that, but what I can tell you is, first of all, it takes investment, right? Because the reason why people are wearing 10 different hats is that they're doing 10 people's jobs and whatever. Like you have to decide if that's actually what you want the person to do. I was thinking about this recently. Did you know that the word priorities did not actually exist? So like for 500 years, it existed as one word, priority.
It's like the est of something. It's like the pinnacle.
Yeah,
this is my priority.
It's one. It's prior, right? The Latin root. You can't have many ones. Like many things cannot be the first thing.
Yes.
Right. So priority is singular. And I think when you are a leader, when you are a board member, if you're not clear about what the priority is, then you'll make lots of bad decisions. And so people have to decide if it is in fact a priority. And interestingly, the word decide is really interesting too. The root of it is from the same root as like homicide, suicide, fratricide. It means to put to death all other options. So when you decide to make something a priority, you put to death all other options. And I think people are unwilling to make that trade-off.
Yeah.
And you can't focus on 10 things at the same time equally well.
Yeah.
Like our human brains just can't handle that. We can focus on one thing usually at a time. So I think there's that. And then the other piece is, I will say, part of it is, I think, development professionals have not been trained properly. They don't have a framework, so they don't actually understand what the highest leverage activities are. And or they're afraid to do things like pick up the phone and call people. And so I think about it in 4 different quadrants. There's strategic revenue generating activities, which are the things that you do to bring in money. There are strategic non-revenue generating activities. This is particularly true for like EDs who have to do things like strategic planning or board management. There are operational revenue generating activities, so things that aren't directly related to fundraising, but aren't necessarily like cleaning up the database. And then there are operational, non-strategic, non-revenue generating activities, things like answering your emails or doing program things, executive directors that don't bring in money. And so the key here is that as an ED or a development director, being very clear about the number of activities that are in the quadrant of revenue generating activities and being ruthless and very honest with yourself about what you're spending your time doing. Because I bet you that if you spend more time in the revenue generating quadrant, you would make more money.
The being honest with yourself, I think, is a challenging one, especially for executive directors. So often I think executive directors are in their role because they both have an expertise and a passion, and they frequently are in the face role of the organization, meaning the relationship role. So they're pulled so many different directions. I think that honesty with yourself is a challenge.
Yes.
I mean, I think you are the brand as an ED.
Yeah.
And I think if people were more honest with themselves, they would be clear with themselves that they're spending a lot of time doing nonsense. Either because they allow other people to take their time or because they are afraid to actually do the thing. And I find that this is true with folks who come up through program. They know how to do the program stuff. They don't know how to do the fundraising stuff. So instead of actually feeling uncomfortable and doing stuff that you're not good at, you just double down on the thing that you're good at and like hope that the other stuff just like kind of happens naturally.
When you and I were talking, you were talking about executive directors who like to, quote, pet the panda bear, right?
The panda bears.
So I want you to talk about that. But I also am wondering if you have words of advice for our frontline fundraisers who are experiencing that, an ED who wants to keep petting the panda bear or all the things and is actually sort of impacting their ability to stay in a quadrant they want to stay into, or board direction, or all of the. I mean, we all know that the structure is inherently flawed in these spaces, right? It really, unless you're working in sort of a magical land, the autonomy you feel from other people in some of that is challenging. So I'm wondering if you can offer some advice to our folks who are like nodding emphatically, but are like, now what?
Yeah. So let's talk about petting the panda bear. So I find this is true of founders generally. So founders usually start an organization because they're really passionate about a thing. I call it petting the panda bear. It's like you really love the panda bears. And then you become ED, and then maybe you get some staff. And the thing is, you can't stop petting the panda bears because that's what you love to do. But inherently, your job is fundraising. It's like being a university president. Like maybe you became a university president because you were a really good professor. But when you are a president, your job is no longer to be a professor. Your job is to fundraise for other people to pet the panda bears. I just mixed metaphors. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I think getting really clear with yourself about what your role is. And like, I get that you want to pet the panda bears, but then if that's the case, be a program director and hire an executive director.
Yeah.
Like, that's what the job is. Maybe if you don't like it, find a different job.
Yep.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is if I'm hearing development directors out here being like, yes, I need to manage my ED. Really simple thing you can do. Have your ED track their time over a 1 week span. And at the end of that week, you can go through that quadrant list of like, was this a revenue generating activity? So it's strategic and operational, revenue generating, non-revenue generating. And you just literally list down, okay, did you do this? Like, is it 1, 2, or 3 or 4? And you start to track over time, and like little by little, hopefully your ED might start to devote more time and energy to the strategic revenue generating activities.
I think that in the world of fundraising events, which is where we're focused so often, the panda equivalent is the silent auction procurement that we
or the centerpieces.
Or the centerpieces.
Which are actually not really revenue generating
at all.
Oh, God. Okay, wait, can I just
Yeah.
I'm gonna so early on in my career, I had like a mommy board, right? Like Real Housewives of New York kind of board. And they got real jazzed up about choosing the napkin colors.
Uh-huh.
And they would get in my face about, well, what are the hors d'oeuvres and what are the napkin colors? And I was like, I literally do not care.
Right.
Like, I don't know why you people are not out there selling tables right now. I don't give a shit about the napkin colors.
It's never about the napkin colors.
It's never about the napkin colors. Why are you wasting my time and energy on the napkin colors? And so, yes, I 100% agree, because here, the other thing is, I think, okay, now I'm like really going for it. I think that there's a very dysfunctional relationship that people in the nonprofit sector generally have with money.
Yes.
And
Yes.
recognizing that the job is to raise money. Like, that is your freaking job. And so if you are uncomfortable with that, if you don't want to do it, if you don't want to talk about money, if you don't want to talk to people with money, great. Find a different job.
Yes. Absolutely.
I don't tell you, it's like, I'm a surgeon, but I hate blood. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
You can pet panda bears and not raise money.
Yes.
That's right.
But
be-
that makes it that you are not going to be an executive director.
You don't get to be an executive director if you don't want to actually do the work. And I say this so often, it makes me crazy, because EDs, if y'all are listening to me, I love you, I'm one of you, but if you're not spending at least 65 to 80% of your time fundraising, you are not doing your job.
Church.
You're just not doing your job.
65 to 80%. I'm like, yes.
That's a great number. We're going to keep bringing that back.
Because you are the chief fundraiser, and any ED who's out here who thinks that you can delegate out fundraising to a development director means that you have inherently misunderstood your value to the organization. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be the one like stuffing envelopes or whatever, but you are the chief fundraiser. I say it like this. A lot of people love Beyonce. Beyonce is amazing. I regret I did not go to her concert. Anyway, the point is, people go to the concert because they want to see Beyonce. They don't go to the concert because they want to see the light show.
Right.
And as executive directors, we need to be the Beyoncés, and we need to have teams around us that make the costumes and like put up the staging and all that. Like, all that stuff needs to happen. But you're the main event.
Yeah.
Wow.
People
I
come
know.
for me.
That's a mic drop right there.
Be the Beyonce.
Be the Beyonce.
Well,
And a lot of people are out here like, they're like thinking that I'm like, I'm not really the Beyonce. I'm just gonna like mess around with the light board. Like, no. When you think about your highest value to the organization, it's not you on the light board, it's you on stage.
yeah.
Being
It's the focus on relationship. We so often lose our focus because we think of the transaction.
Yep.
The cash the check, done. No, open door. The base of the organization is the relationship. That is who people want to get to know, want to understand. And when there's leadership transition, we see massive shifts in donor transition unless a leadership plan has been made.
Yep.
And that is something that we are seeing a lot of right now in this sector, because burnout was high during COVID as people tried to learn new skills and new tools. And as we see a lot of new people in leadership, we're seeing the need for organizations to rebuild, recultivate, design a new Beyonce for their organization and reconnect everyone to their new star. And I think that it's a big job. It's a lot of work. It takes time too.
Yep.
and I think here's the paradox, right? It's almost like the ED has to be the Trojan horse of like, hey, I'm going to draw you in with my charisma and charm and all the things. And then I'm going to strategically connect you to the broader mission. Like, I am going to make this about you, not about me, right? How is your contribution completing your story of you? And I think that people fail to strategically make that transition to make it about the donor, because if it's about me, then it matters, but it doesn't really matter who is at the head, as long as I keep getting those dopamine hits of like, yes, it's about me and my story. And so I think that's one thing. And then the second thing is, I think when we see leadership transitions, it's often an indication of or when we lose donors, it's a loss of trust, because at the end of the day, when I give to an organization, it's because I trust the leadership. I trust that you know what you're doing. I trust that you're going to do good things with my money. And so if I haven't engendered that deep trust on various levels of the organization, then of course, like if the person I trust is gone, then I don't trust anymore.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the truth right there.
It is.
Well, we're going to take a short break and come back to jump in the fundraising elevator with Rhea Wong. We'll be right back. We've been partnering with Greater Giving for over 20 years as our go-to event auction software. Greater Giving allows us to do our job, planning fundraising events, even better because we can manage guest lists, seating, bid number assignments, and sales all in one place.
That makes it great for our nonprofit partners and their guests. Check out Greater Giving for your next event at greatergiving.com. Link in the show notes.
We're coming back, singing Prince, getting
Yes.
ready to jump into the fundraising elevator where we're all headed up. And Rhea, you have so much incredible advice. You provide so much resource and coaching to the nonprofit sector and to our fundraising friends. Is there a single tip that you would give as like, here's my best advice to take your fundraising to the next level?
I have a lot of advice, as you can tell, I'm not shy, but the thing that I would say that will move your fundraising the most is for you to do the internal work of examining your own baggage about money. Because it's often our own baggage and our own trauma and our own stories about money that hold us back from being the fundraisers that we truly want to be and to help other people unlock their narrative. Because we all have stories about money. Oh, there's not enough of it. Rich people are different. Money in, money out. The money is the root of all evil. Like I've heard all the things. And until you examine the stories that you carry and then decide to put to death all other options, to decide whether or not the stories serve you or not, and what other stories you can replace it with, then that's when you experience freedom.
Wow. So if you've enjoyed some of these pearls of wisdom and are not currently subscribing to Nonprofit Lowdown, which is Rhea's podcast, just go do it.
Yeah.
Please go do it. It's amazing.
It's a weekly listen. You have to.
Rhea, how can folks get a hold of you? I also hear there's something new burbling on the horizon, where you'll be and what you'll be doing. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So the best place to get in front of me is I have a website, rheawong.com. You can join my newsletter. I publish weekly. I have cute dog photos. You'll be glad you did. I have a book, Get That Money, Honey, for $15. You can have all of this information in a handy paperback, or there's an Audible edition, an audiobook, so you can have me in your ear. And then finally, I'm all over LinkedIn, so that's where I hang out. But I'm going to very soon start with the Nonprofit Quarterly to start a column called The Money Honey, I think. Don't quote me on this. I haven't gotten final approval on this. But if you have questions about fundraising that you would like me to answer in my column, hit me up on LinkedIn. Happy to answer all the questions. As you can tell, I'm not short of opinions.
And we love that you're not short of opinions. You're also not short on the generosity of your knowledge and sharing it with the sector. So thank you so much for all of you do. And thanks so much for being here and sharing some of that with us today. Next week, we're going to talk to Kim Fountain, who is the Deputy CEO of the San Diego LGBT Community Center, about building community. Make sure you tune in. We can't wait.
Thank you, Rhea. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much, ladies. This was so fun. Appreciate it.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV Department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson, Heidi Christensen, and Adam Breeden. Video production by Shannon Doran. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. Marketing by Lisa Aragon. Support from Mary Elizabeth, Todd Campbell, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Friends, before we leave you, we want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please follow, subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, please share it with a friend and leave a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Unleash the power of events to energize your donors and amplify your mission. Join us at the Elevate Conference in 2025, where you'll learn the essential tools for planning a successful fundraising event. Book your tickets now for March 12th and 13th. This dynamic hybrid conference, hosted at Avenue in Portland, Oregon, and streamed live for our virtual audience, will equip you with practical tools, demos, and templates that you can put to work immediately. Don't miss out. Secure your spot today at Elevate 2025. Visit elevatenonprofit.com to register now. Elevate Conference 2025 is brought to you by Swaim Strategies and the AV Department, powered by elevatenonprofit.com. Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV Department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV Department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.